Okay. Our district manager, my friend Richard Baier.
So good evening, and thank you for coming out on this rather stormy and windy night. I'm Richard Baier, I'm the district manager, and first of all, I want to wish you all a happy holiday. I hope that you all have a great holiday. I'll be leaving with my family on a little vacation, so I'm excited about that. But into the presentation, I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about what we started talking about last year, which was really 3 focus areas. You hear a lot about the core values of the district. These are 3 focus areas that when I spoke to the 100 supervisors, district board members, ARC committee members, and NSCUD board of directors, these were issues that came up over and over. And enhanced communication was certainly an issue, both with the board as well as with all of the supervisors, and then with our residents out there as well. Enhanced customer service, that was a big issue. I think the district has a good level of customer service, but we had some room, like any government or any business, some room for growth and improvement, and we still do, but I think we've made some strides, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then also a little better system and analytical decision making. As an engineer myself in training who has run large governments, the district, it was a little bit run, I'll say differently in a way, and what I mean by that is that we were very reliant on paper systems. We were very reliant on, if you will, looking at just the past year or two when budgeting for our upcoming budget. You all probably understand this, but just if you're standing around a cocktail party or something, this is good cocktail knowledge to have. Sometimes you find yourself, you might be at a loss for, well, the lights are on. You might be at a loss for words. We have $2 billion, with a B, dollars worth of public infrastructure, both horizontal and vertical. So that's quite a task undertaken that I don't take lightly. This isn't meant really for you to see, and this is just here, it's on our website, but this is the reorganization of the district government. Many of these things I went over about a year ago when I went over the district government. The 2 principal areas where we made major changes were, first of all, on the left-hand side. That is the, if you will, column that has all of the financial, fiscal, risk management, and budgetary functions of the district government. They have been spread out before in sort of a disparate way across many different departments, which makes it very difficult both for information sharing, but also makes it very, very difficult to have a greater sense of efficiency when dealing with similar functions. And then the other is right here on the right-hand side, and that was the combining of community standards and also combining that with customer service. For me, having gone through the community standards process when making improvements to my own home in District 10, I saw that there could be some improvement. And like any organization, we want to focus on what we can do better. The government really exists, and I believe this, the government exists to serve the people. If there really isn't a service and a high level of service function out there, then the government doesn't really need to exist. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the strides made there. So you may not have a full understanding, some probably do, but we have 16 independent districts. So we have the number of districts 1 through 13. Currently there is a land area for 13, which is down as you go left on South Morris in the Chitty Chatty area, across from, if you will, Continental Country Club. And then we have districts 1 through 12, of course, that all have housing stock. We have 3 commercial districts, and you probably know of those, the VCCD, which, if you will, is a purveyor of contracts. And then we have the Brownwood CDD and Sumter Landing CDD. Both are more commercial. We also have NSCUD, and that is a dependent district. That is the district that runs the utilities that we see in districts 5 through 8. And so unlike what we'll talk about with CSU, which is districts 9, 10, and 11, NSCUD is a dependent district and is a separate governmental entity. 70 square miles. So again, if you find yourself at a loss of a cocktail party and you don't have anything to say to the person next to you, you can say, did you know how big the districts all in the villages, 70 square miles. So that's quite the size. If you think of it in terms of a local city like the city of Clearwater, is about 26.5 square miles. Currently, there is more property owned south of 44 than there is north of 44 insofar as the developer had owned or still owns south of 44. So you can look for a lot of growth. There's pros and cons, and I hear it all the time relating to, I like growth because we get new things like the pitch and putt, additional golf courses, food trucks, and I don't like growth because there's tremendous congestion. Well, coming from DC, when people say to me, tremendous congestion, I say, really? Okay. I'm worried that there won't be groceries. I won't be able to get bread in the stores. Again, I kind of have to look at them skeptical. Really? Come on, really? You know, so maybe Aldi's won't have your favorite loaf of bread, or Publix, or that German Stollen that we all like at Christmas time won't be on the shelf, but we'll be able to get bread. So, but there are concerns, of course, about infrastructure. And though I talk a little bit lightly about some of the more business and some of the other aspects that I hear about, the infrastructure is certainly of concern. And so we're on guard with regard to, you know, the management of the infrastructure and also the provision of those natural resources. The villages, if you look at populations bigger than half the counties, and if you look at municipalities, cities, we're the 17th largest. So you don't think of the villages as a city, but 17th largest, with a population of about 125,000 residents, but actually it's closer to about 132 now. So about 132. And so we mentioned the counties there. So these are some of the questions that I thought you might have before I go into some of the more mundane issues relating to some of the things we've done. The Bromwood Wood Shop. So the Bromwood Wood Shop, we get a lot of questions. I kind of went through the last 5 months of questions that came in through incident reporting, through districtgov.org, right? Districtgov.org, your website that you can send questions to us. You know. So districtgov.org, when I went through the incident reporting, a lot of questions about the Bromwood Wood Shop. Well, the Bromwood Wood Shop is going to start in earnest construction in about a month and a half. You see that there has been some utility work and some access work down at the Bromwood Wood Shop. Where is the Bromwood Wood Shop? Well, it's really in the shadow of the fire station right there on Buena Vista and the water tower across from the Eisenhower Regional Rec Center. It will be a 12,000 square foot wood shop that will, oh, here's some wows, that's good. So a 12,000 square foot wood shop that will provide another location for the Rolling Acres Wood Shop, which has thousands of members, about 800. They've reported now about 1,000 as of a couple weeks ago on their wait list. It's sort of a complicated agreement in that the developer gave the property to the district for use of a recreational woodshop use. The district is actually building the building itself, and the woodshop will be supplying the vast majority of the inside equipment, and also about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of in-kind labor insofar as all the furniture, the counters, all that sort of FF&E that you would find inside, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We look for that to be completed by the end of 2020. That should be pretty well served by golf cart. They've already done an internal study, the wood shop itself, and the majority of residents that they find are going to come by golf cart, which would really be a positive thing. You can get to the wood shop up on Rolling Acres, actually just off Rolling Acres, by golf cart, but it's certainly not an easy trek, so this will be a little bit more direct. The next thing we get a lot of questions about is signage. So you might recall there was a big discussion about signage and wayfinding for major destinations, just like you'd have on a roadway. There were issues in the evening. The granite signs were very pretty. The granite signs had a phosphorescent sort of paint put inside, but they were very, very difficult to see. So there was a multimodal task force for wayfinding. They actually met for the better part of about 7-8 months on this project, and so those signs have been installed. Hopefully you've seen at the decision points where you come out of tunnels, at stop signs, that there is major wayfinding guide signage. Now, we get questions relating to, I can't find the Lake Deaton pool. Okay, well, that's not a major wayfinding destination. We concentrated on, as agreed to by your elected officials, on that multimodal task force, on major destinations, which would be issues like finding your way to north or south on Buena Vista Boulevard, or north or south on Morris, or major recreation centers or the hospital. So those were the major points of access that we were trying to guide people to. Paradise Recreation Center, at the January 23rd workshop of the AAC, the Amenity Authority Committee, and that's the group north of 466 that is in charge of the amenity structures. They actually cogitated on if, in fact, the Paradise Recreation Center, which is a very large and aged set of buildings that are connected together, some block and some actually are metal prefabricated. The block buildings are in much, much better condition, which is probably no surprise. The metal buildings are in much worse condition. So the cost of a project, if you were to demolish and rebuild a 30,000 plus square foot recreation center, to replace that recreation center was on the order of magnitude of $16 to $18 million. So it's a lot of money. So, but the AAC, number one, couldn't support at this time doing that because it wasn't built into the budget with the RAD funds, the amenity fee funds, but also because they were working on another major project off of County Road 42, which is the first responders recreation site, which is, I'll skip down there to County Road 42 church property. So that facility is located off of County Road 42. It is right behind the Baptist Church, just west of Buena Vista Boulevard and County Road 42. They wanted to build that site out and use that as swing space before they did any work at the Paradise Recreation Center. That recreation center will be around 8,000 square feet. They're going to utilize the existing building. The parish hall that exists is in very good to excellent condition, as examined by a structural survey and inspection company. They've just completed, how many of you actually took the survey in here? Did many of you take the survey? So some. They completed a pretty good survey of several thousand people, certainly not as many as we would like to have seen, that wanted several things out there. They wanted new and different things relating to, for example, golf. So they're going to put in an 18-hole putt and play like down in Fenny. So that's one big thing. Another thing was they wanted more outside amenities dealing with things that other recreation centers didn't have. So one thing they're putting out there is a large resort-style pool. Resort-style that's more like cattail or river bend, and unlike the regular rectangular or sort of free-form pools that don't have as much seating, as many jets, that aren't as of a depth, that are more for, if you will, light swimming, and also sort of that aerobic, you see people walking in the pool. So they finished a lot of discussion back and forth about the concept, the size, type of pool. Outside gathering spaces, there's a large gathering space with a gas-fueled fire pit, if you will, like is down in Fenny, outside the Fenny Rec Center. And then there is a number of areas inside that are dedicated to spaces that are not afforded north of 44. Some of the glassworks, things like that. So it was a very interesting project, but that project will have to be completed in earnest and provide swing space before any consideration of any rebuild on Paradise Rec Center. You might be wondering, or you may not be wondering, and this might be news to you, there are two buildings that are being built behind the new fire station south of 44 on South Morris, which used to be 468. Those two buildings are going to house, as a South Satellite Annex, staff work that's being done for maintenance on all the facilities that are south of 466A. Rather than have in our industry all of the deadhead time where you're traveling in a car back and forth to the reaches far south from Sumter Landing as a centroid of the government, we're setting up this satellite location. It will both save in travel time, gas, wear and tear on vehicles, but will also allow a more effective response. It's right behind the fire station, so rather than also have to buy another piece of property, it was a piece of property that was lying fallow behind the fire station. So it's a good use of that property. DPM, Department of Property Management, who maintains all of our facilities, will actually be housed on there. This is a new model of having several co-located facilities like we have with customer service. Have any of you been down to the customer service area that's adjacent to Fire Station 47 on South Morris? Anybody? A couple, one people, two people? So that is a customer service center that can do everything just like Sumter Landing can. If you want to pay off a bond, you've got a question about utility bill, you want to get a gate card replaced, you've got maybe an ID card replacement issue, you can do everything down there. So that is, if you will, a model that we're following again that is providing the services that are co-located, a number of facilities together, and bring the facilities out to the people. One thing that's really difficult for me to understand is the model of making all of our residents travel to a single location. And so this sort of satellite location will become what I see as a better and more efficient model for services for our residents. We talked a little bit about the church property. Parr Fire Station is really about 85% done. Right there on Parr Drive, the additional bay and remodeling to not only accommodate and expand staff, but also the larger ladder vehicle. One of the things that we have to respond to, just like any city, any area, are multi-story buildings. So when people have said to me, and this came up at the prior meeting, why do we need a multi-story service sort of ladder truck when I live in a single family house? Well, the straightforward response is, if your mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter are there in one of those multi-story facilities, we have to service that. Our response model, insofar as fire and rescue, is 4 minutes and 26 seconds on average from the turnout of the bay, right, Chief? And that actually is about 3 to 3.5 minutes less than our surrounding jurisdictions. Is that correct? And so really those first several minutes make the most difference insofar as getting to the fire and providing also that medical support time. So what we are looking at is making sure that we have that ISO rating, that rating that keeps our insurance levels very low and also provides a very high level of service as we age in place within the villages, whether it's a single family house or it's a 3 or 4 story building. We talked about Parr Station 468, Delmar gate entry and Shea gate entry. So for a long time we have dealt with a couple of gates on the north end that really aren't on par with the other gates around the district. And we get a lot of questions relating to, well, do we live in a gated community or do we not live in a gated community? So let me dispel that. We don't live in a gated community. We live in a community with gates. It's not a gated community. Anybody can open the gate and come in. And the gates really serve a couple functions. The first function is to make sure that traffic is controlled coming in at an acceptable speed. That speed allowing pedestrians, cyclists, and also people on golf carts to cross either in front of, but the majority of it is behind the gate, but there are some in front, some older style gates. So that is very, very important. Also, providing that level of service that gate attendants provide is also very, very important. We went through a pretty good community discussion with the people that live in and around Griffin and Shea Gates up in the historic area. Their level of amenities and the type of amenities have always been sought to be on par with everyone in the villages. Just because it's part of the historic area, we try to make those amenities on par. And those gates up there, well, one gate actually, Shea, had no restroom. Now when you think of it, you think, well, had no restroom? Well, what's the big deal about having a restroom? Well, our average employee is 70 years old. It's part-time. So I don't need to say more by the looks on many of your faces, but I will. I'll force myself because I'm shy.
Super beta prostate.
Yeah, super beta prostate, he said. So there are a number of issues with that. Number one, we had men and women both during the day and in the evening walking down along the side of a road on no sidewalk to the Circle K. That's just not acceptable. So you can't have people that are in public buildings walking at night, putting a sign up in the window and walking down basically to use a public restroom, a private restroom. If the restroom's closed, then what does that person do? So we had a pretty big discussion whether or not we even keep that gate. Do we wall it off? Do we remodel the gate down at Griffin, which is unmanned? What do we do? The end result was that we actually put a sewer and water line, which should have been done just like any other building that we have that has employees in it, and we provide a bathroom, and we provide that for the employees that work there. And so that work will, it's just getting started because Lake County and the town of Lady Lake both want to do a concurrent review, different than we were told initially, which was the town of Lady Lake was going to do all the permitting. So that's the one project was discussed. The other project looking at was the Del Mar Gate. That was by far probably a much more and difficult discussion. That gate, as you know, as you come into the villages, driving away from Spanish Springs, only had one lane coming in. So there was both a sort of a problem with the person who is gate attendant is screaming at the person who's coming in, resident or not, trying to hail someone down and answer questions. Where is the street? You know, how do I do this? Where do I go? So that's also a problem. The bigger problem was that the sidewalk there did not meet current standards. So we have a number of people that walk up and down that multimodal town of Lady Lake roadway with Del Mar, and they actually get to our sidewalk, and it was not ADA compliant. And the third issue was that we lacked storage when you're coming away from Spanish Springs, and we did not have sufficient storage. And for major events coming from the Sharon, we still don't. But for the majority of time, we do, because now we have two gates coming in, 2 lanes coming into that gate, and then they converge and merge just beyond the gate. So that storage is provided. So that project was completed several months ago. And that also was a project I think that was long overdue. The next is the District 4 Unit 56 Stormwater Piping Project. And for all those that think that I'm afraid, or anyone in district government, or as it was described, his government, to say the word sinkhole, I just said it, sinkhole. So sinkhole, the reason that we don't use that word indiscriminately isn't because there's a fear of saying it, it's because there's a very specific engineering definition in the Florida statutes that it's classified with certain criteria by a geotechnical engineer. So there were 5 sinkholes, and there are still 5 sinkholes that exist up in these 2 private residence areas that affected the infrastructure, both in the right-of-way on McLaurin Terrace at McAlpin, and also the 2 houses. The very difficult thing for the district is it was really like the perfect storm. We had an outfall pipe 20-some feet down between 2 houses that was offset from the houses about 6 feet in each direction. The pipe was 42 inches in size and was a zinc-coated corrugated aluminum pipe. So that pipe collapsed when the sinkholes opened up. Unfortunately, the legislation, the way it's written on the books, is for people who want to get back into their homes. So your sinkhole insurance, your catastrophic loss insurance, depending on what type you have, it really forecasts that you want to get back into your home. Sinkholes, unfortunately, are not uncommon to this part of Florida, a little bit north of here. In fact, there is a large swath from really over in North Tampa over to the other coast, which if you look at the USGS maps, because of the karst topography, there are many, many sinkholes that have been charted over the years. So what we undertook there was, after working with Marion County with no success insofar as condemnation or falling through at the houses, as Cliff is painfully aware, and also Marquez, we then tried the legal route. Well, can we, the district, kind of push Marion County and the property owners to do something? Each of the property owners had sinkhole insurance. Each of the property owners have taken their sinkhole insurance, moved to other communities, and also were able to sell their houses as is. The houses still sit there with some degree of remediation in a state that they're hoping to remodel and resell. That's all I can say about that. The district undertook a stormwater project to provide an outfall behind the Calumet Grove postal facility and virtually repipe the Calumet Grove end of the neighborhood. Used to be, if you will, the high end. All the water was collected and flowed out to the Torrey Pines Golf Course on the low end, the outfall pipe between the house. What we did was we reversed it. The high end became the McAlpin-McLaurin intersection in front of the houses. And we repiped it all the way out the reverse way. And it actually was less money than having to repair the house, well, to buy the houses initially. We had a couple board members that wanted to buy the houses, to rip down the houses, to stabilize the property, to rebuild a 20-foot pipe that was on the property, and then to flip those properties. So it came in at about $1.54 million. A huge piping project for a fairly small district. So that came in ahead of schedule and under budget. Administrative updates. Growth in the village expansion. I can only tell you that as we are asked about questions relating to expansion, the village is going to continue to expand. That like change, I think we're going to see throughout our lifetime. At least, I hope throughout my lifetime. So, 25 more years. Yeah. So if you think of that amount of property, you will see that development grow. We are working through the fire chief and his planning staff and our staff and administration to make sure that we have the appropriate services. The fire station is a result of that I mentioned earlier on South Morris, and the next fire station will be in the 470 corridor over near Lake Oklahoma, over near Okahumpka, not Lake Okahumpka. So that planning is very, very important to us. Just like we'll talk about in a second, the CSU, the Central Sumter Utility Planning that we're undertaking. Things like updated board rules, policies, and procedures. For most of you think, well, what does that matter? Well, it matters because you have several supervisors. Maybe if we could get them to raise their hands. Here's 2 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 supervisors of the 100 for all the numbered districts and the commercial districts and the NSCUD board that basically follow these rules, policies, and procedures of how they govern these meetings. What do these meetings do? How do they affect you? Well, which they didn't have to this year, except for 2 units in District 12 because of acreage changes, they didn't have to raise any budget, but if they have to actually increase maintenance fees, these rules govern that. If you come and speak at a meeting, these rules actually govern how they take and consider your input. So they're really quite important, but for many of you, very mundane. So these rules have been written in 1998. Think of how many things changed in 1988. For example, I wouldn't be doing a PowerPoint, I'd be doing an overhead, sliding those celluloid pieces of individual frames on. Okay, so we updated all of with them, at their direction, all of their boards, rules, policies, and procedures. A huge undertaking. Fleet procurement and maintenance. We have 165 vehicles in our fleet. For me, having worked in much larger jurisdictions, that is a very, very small fleet. At one time, just several years ago, there was a push to build actually a fleet maintenance facility. For that size fleet, not really a good idea. To try to train and keep staffed and have all of the equipment necessary for the number of vehicles we have, from fire trucks to other service vehicles, really expensive proposition. So we were able to, number one, outsource our fleet. Our fleet is going to almost entirely, except for some of the larger public safety vehicles, the fire engines, to a lease fleet. I don't think that anyone in this room really cares if one of our workers pull up in front of your house to do something in the right of way and they pull up in an owned vehicle or a lease vehicle. I think what you care about is, at least I hope, what you care about is that the vehicle is being used in an efficient manner, that we're managing your dollars, that actually it is an efficiently running vehicle, and it provides a service that's needed in a professional manner. And so we're going to see, just in the first year, about $1 million worth of savings in leasing our fleet as opposed to buying the fleet. Or keeping, that doesn't even sound right. Continuing, I'm going to take a question at the end, continuing buying the fleet. So I think that that's really an important issue. Fleet maintenance is another big issue. Fleet maintenance, we had talked about the effort to maintain the fleet. we were able to negotiate an agreement with Sumter County because they want to have enough vehicles to be able to maintain behind the Sumter County Services Building right there at Powell and Burnsett. And so they are servicing our vehicles for free, which is a great win for the district. Solid waste management recycling. For those of you that live south of 44, you already have a more advanced program for handling of your waste. It all goes to a waste energy facility. If you look at the metrics with a waste energy facility, one that actually has a controlled and regulated burn from EPA and DEP state, and also puts back energy on the grid, it is much, much more cost effective than going through a long haul trucking for solid waste and recycling that we're doing north of 44. Why do I say that? If you actually have missed all the advertisement on the news, or just several this week, radio, magazines, PBS specials, there is no market out there for our recyclables. So there is no market. So you look at glass, which when I was little, you'd walk up the soda or the pop bottles up to the corner, you get a nickel or a couple pennies or a dime. They have no value anymore. The plastics have no value. The paper products have no value. We are subsidizing at a tune of $900,000 a year our recycling program. So when you think of our children in this big solid waste management planning effort we've gone over the last 5.5 months, having probably 800 people, Cliff, you've been at several of the meetings or all the meetings, and many of the other supervisors, Ken and Mark and a number of people, you can see that there is a big interest to be a steward of the environment. But at a tune of $900,000, I really would rather not be stoned now. Let me get a head start running, okay? So I just don't think that that's something that is known by our residents. What we're looking for from the direction of the NSCUD board for those north of 44 is a plan that will not only take the 2 recyclables that we have, which are currently corrugated cardboard, and then also we have a little bit of an aluminum market, just very slight. So those 2 have a positive, if you will, return. The rest of the materials, ferrous and glass and plastics, just don't really have any return at all. We're subsidized, I mentioned. And continue a streamlined recycling program that actually has benefit for the environment. And the rest of the products will then be taken, we're currently negotiating to a waste energy facility. There is one that is local. Like I said, we're negotiating with them, so this isn't the final word, but we are actually, I think, on a pretty good path to be able to control our current cost increases and also be able to provide a better long-term environment for our waste. Right now, our solid waste, and you'll see the tonnage in just a minute, is trucked up to Cheshire County, Cheshire Island, Georgia. So you talk about taking your waste from one place and putting it to another, so probably don't need to say too much more on that. Purchasing. We spend, as you can imagine, tens and tens of millions of dollars a year on supplies, whether it's wood, whether it's pens, whether it's copier, ink, all sorts of things. Right now, the purchasing is decentralized. We have changed all of that, going to a centralized purchasing system, and we have updated the purchasing manual to allow for better bulk purchasing, which is just an easy thing government to do to save money. Environmental initiatives, I don't see any here. Usually I have someone that I use as a victim. Okay, but I won't. So styrofoam cups, I've got to tell you, I call them our 1,000-year cups. We just have to wean ourselves off of those. We're going to be looking at a product that has a % paper recycled product in it. You will see it. You will not be seeing straws and stirs that are plastic in the rec centers. That will be a big change this year. We've changed out the postal facilities to LED lighting. It is resulting in thousands of dollars a month in savings. You think of the number of postal facilities we have. We're converting about 35% of our fleet, that which does not have any towing need, to hybrid, which also is starting to bear some fruit back insofar as savings relating to gas fuel consumption. So you're at a party and you don't know what to say. You know, you're looking a little awkward. You bring up recycling. This is just put up here. That's right. This is just put up here. This is big business in the district. You know, when I started and I was the assistant district manager, I mentioned to our district manager, Jan Tutt, who was a great lady and she was here for a number of years. I mentioned to her, I said, this is big business. We got to take a look at this. I'm like, oh, that's so crappy, Richard. That's just all trashy, you know. That's a joke. So, but she kind of looked like, I don't know, you know. But she was interested. I don't know, you know. Am I really engaged in this? This is big business. So you can see here why we're looking at with an all-in about $12 million a year effort with all of our district north of 44 recycling and solid waste operations. It's big business. You can see here also that, you know, Florida recycling rate, which has more waste energy plants than any other state in the country, recycling 54%, the district is about 37%, and U.S. recycling rate is 35% roughly. So we're doing pretty well. You could look for our recycling rate to go down a little bit. Why? Because as we recycle less, what they do is they take the tonnage, divert it, and they count that as recycling. But then that tonnage, as I mentioned, there's no market for it. It rejoins, what we just need to separate, it rejoins our solid waste stream and goes right up to Georgia and is put in a landfill. And we have to pay up there then for the tipping fee. It's called per ton. Not really a good model. A couple other things. Amenity fees. Amenity fees, as you know, it is a fee for service. Some of you, use a lot of the services. You may use the rec centers. You may play pickleball, tennis, golf, a number of things. Some of you don't. I look at it like this. So if you have this, you know, it's like going to the gym and saying, I only want to go to the gym and have the fruit smoothie and talk to people and walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes, so I don't like to pay for that one machine. It's a fee for services that you entered into with your contract, just like I did. And the amenity fees, the discussion this year was a really long one. The AAC had several joint meetings with the PWAC, and the deferral cap was lifted. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Long term, you look around at this rec center and others, if you want, and I think most of the people bought in the bill just because of the way it looks, at least I think, and the recreation here, if you want to have that revenue stream, those amenity dollars, to be able to support this sort of lifestyle, the deferral cap, as we looked at as part of the presentations, and there's probably 100 pages on there of questions answered and different financial models, the cap had to come off because there was, for RAD and for SLAD, RAD is the Recreational Amenity Division Fund north of 466, SLAD is south. They both were expenditures, even though I'm pulling them down, you can't keep, you're not sitting on a Walmart, nothing wrong with Walmart or a Target, folding chair. You're sitting on something very different, and this is the lifestyle, and this is the type of facilities that we have in the district. FICA Alternative Plan. One of the things that we did was we had a number of part-time employees. The vast majority of our staff were part-time employees. And the majority of those I mentioned are average age 70 years old. We were paying Social Security to those people. At 70, most people are collecting Social Security that are eligible. Most people, not everybody, but most people. And so that was being paid in. But for governments, you can have a FICA alternative where you make a deposit into an interest-bearing account in lieu of Social Security, because people have their quarters for the most part earned, and that is a portable account they take with them. It is pre-tax, so therefore you save that amount that would be put in on the entirety of their salary structure. It resulted in $500,000 a year being able to pull out of our general fund. So that was definitely a win. Our employees were very happy because they have a portable fund. When you have us contributing to Social Security and you're collecting Social Security, typically there's no benefit that you see, because when you're working part-time for whatever you work and you're making 15 or 13 or 12, typically it's not your highest earning quarter, so you're not moving that needle at all. The AAC fiscal reserve policy was a major initiative, and that was put in place to make sure that the RAD fund maintains a minimum balance. And so the AAC, who those people in those district areas they elected to do that and set that, which was excellent. Basically, it'll hold in tow a multi-million-dollar balance that they cannot go below. And I would look at the PWAC this year will probably have a discussion along the same lines. The CSU acquisition, Central Sumter Utility, is that utility that exists between 466A and 44, bounded by, if you will, Powell Road, and then also over to the Lake Sumter County line. That utility is a private utility, was offered to the district government for purchase, and the NSCUD board, by majority vote, actually voted to acquire that utility. Why is that important to you all? Well, as Mr. Lieberman, who lives in District 10, and I were discussing earlier before the meeting, you can actually either have a utility owned by a private party who sets its rate with a Tallahassee entity, the PSC, and I would imagine that most of you, if you have a question or issue, are not going to drive up because your bill is going to go up by a couple dollars to Tallahassee, Florida, and argue it out for the PSC. But if you have an issue with a rate increase, I would more imagine the more transparent thing to do would be to set that locally and have you come to that board meeting, which is held right there in Sumter Landing. Also, the other entity, the NSU, which are districts 5 through 8, this is the sister utility, so the two utilities are interconnected. So this provides for the continuous backup for the NSU facility. The purchase also included a bulk agreement for purchase of water from the city of Fruitland Park, and so that comes with it serving District 11. The last region, I think, which is really important, is long-term, the control of infrastructure, I think, has always been important to be closest to the people. If, in fact, any party who is farther from the residents it serve controls that infrastructure, I think it is a little less transparent and less able to be, if you will, receive the input of the residents. So I think that if those of you that participate with the state of Florida and you compare your experience to participating with a local government, whether a city or the district government, I think typically you have a more direct and experience and a better experience. The Sanitation Authority bond refund, so that refund resulted in just over $40 million. And so that was taking advantage of the market conditions and refinancing that bond issue. I didn't get any gasps there. I thought, wow, we got savings of $40 million. There we go. Okay, so make sure you guys are awake. Okay, I'm not going to read through all of this because I would put you really to sleep. But I do want to just bring out a few things. Number one, our district all-in budget this year went down by about $3.5 million. Ooh. Okay, there we go. That was kind of a little weak clap, but okay. So that wasn't me, but it was a collection of staff and also the district board supervisors. I think that is a big win. That's about a 1.25% reduction, and you can look for that same sort of efficiency. You know, I live in the villages. I pay taxes in the villages. I live in Sumter County. I hear all the things that you guys hear and maybe that you guys say, and so I think it's very important that we make sure that we're providing the best service at the lowest cost. This is just a number of things that are within the 1920 budget. Our budget cycle runs from October 1st to September 30th, and so this gives you a couple of the major emphasis areas. Again, not going to read every single thing, but the major platforms of GIS use insofar as going to an asset management system, we are well underway. If you've seen the vehicles from Jacobs driving around with the space-age looking flying saucers on top, they're picking up 3D orthogonal imagery using LiDAR. That light detection and ranging military use that was years ago only used by military is being used now to populate GIS. Why is this important? Because when you actually have $2 billion worth of infrastructure, you can't be relying on men and women that are comparatively looking at spreadsheets. We're using 1995 technology. It just doesn't work. So, well, it works, but you don't get really the basic level comparison when you look at similar floor plates to be able to compare energy use, cost increases and decreases. It's very, very important to be able to manage that well. So we have 20 pages of balanced scorecards. I did not attach all of them, just a couple, but they're on our website. What did you ask? What is the website? Okay, thank you. districtgov.org. So you go on districtgov.org and you can actually take a look at all of these balanced scorecards across all these areas. These are all of the contributory elements just on this first page of $1.458 million insofar as we talked about FICA alternative. I've eliminated several positions that I didn't feel were necessary to the core service of our government. These were utility positions. We actually have one in-house person and a utility contractor that really can do the job. We didn't need, when these positions came vacant, we eliminated these two positions. I talked about the fleet. I talked a little bit about the interlocal agreement. With streetlight operations, Sumter County was basically, I gotta explain it. During the interlocal agreement discussion, Sumter County actually had raised the issue of street lighting. That is something that is normally part and parcel, part of a county budget, and so they are taking on that ongoing maintenance responsibility. We have foregone the revenue that they gave us because we maintain the medians on the Sumter County major roadways. But if you think about it, what's going to go up faster? The electric and the electric cost and all those poles you guys keep hitting my poles. So I haven't hit one myself. I'm sure no one, I'm sure as I hear every place I go, the people that hit poles are A, the renters, and B, the landscapers. So I'll just leave it at that. Again, not going to read this off those almost 30 pages, but these are all the changes that were made relating to IT, asset management, just a huge jumpstart in technology. For those of you that are technology-based, using GIS, for those of you that are technology savvy, we saved $20,000 a month in server space storage by using a single point server and also using cloud storage. So just a huge amount of savings. I don't know if that was a yawn or a, but I'll take it either way. So public safety, thanks to Chief Kane, he didn't come always willing to the table with these savings, but we dragged him. It was hard because he had a fire extinguisher that beat me over the head with it. But we did eliminate some of his staff because they were repairing fire vehicles. It's very difficult to stay current on the number and type of vehicles that we have. More efficiently can be done and done by Sumter County and at no cost as they're maintaining their vehicles. Also, you see over here small equipment, that's been eliminated, $16,000. So their savings was just under $800,000. District property management, that bulk purchasing, and people say, is this only the good stuff? No, this is all the contracts. I think Cliff, you'll be honest, I know he'll be honest with you. We come forward and the first question is, are we holding the first, second, third year constant? Have we cut the cost? Have you scrubbed this? And the answer is yes, and these are their contracts. So that is all that I have. I'm sure that you're glad that I'm done with this, and I will take some questions.
When you do your budgeting, are you your 1.4 million savings? Is that lessons learned? You said some technology. Are you incremental budgeting, or are you zero-based budgeting, where you're really looking at things and trying to get the cost down every year? Or
So
how does that work?
We've employed a zero-based budgeting where we're trying to make sure that we are staying below the budget that was set in the prior year. Now, what I want to say is this year, those of you who can remember let's stay away from the Sumter County, a district maintenance fee increase that don't live in districts 1 through 4, raise your hand.
We got 10%. That's fine.
No, you didn't.
No.
No.
$40, so
Zero. Yep, zero. So District 10, where I owned property until a couple months ago, zero. You didn't have an increase. So District 10 has never had an increase. So Districts actually 5 through 11 have never had a rate increase. There's a chairman right there for District 11.
No, I was saying, did it go from 40 to 55?
Nope.
Or is it going?
You're talking about your amending fee, which is by contract. No, we're talking about a maintenance fee. Your maintenance fee is like your local taxes, which pays for the infrastructure, 0%. So we use a 0%, zero-based budgeting scenario. However, I do want to let you know, those that are in District 1 through 4, that we will be reviewing all of our infrastructure this year. So we have several capital projects, planning efforts with those supervisors. I want to make sure, as we do every year, that the supervisors understand what the maintenance needs are on those older districts. And I say older districts because they were developed first. So it's very important. What I don't want to have, and I don't think anyone wants to have, is where you have a spike, where you have prosperity and then a spike, and then prosperity and then a spike. That makes it very difficult for me actually to budget, and I'm sure as a homeowner it makes it very difficult for you to budget as well. Yes, sir.
I'll start with my last question. What happens if you get the phone call tonight about 3 o'clock in the morning from your IT guy and say, we've just been hit by ransomware? What kind of exposure do we have to that? And what kind of...
That's a really good question that just happened in New Orleans. You probably read about it. They're on a paper system all except for fire. So we actually have both ransomware protection, but we also have a ransomware insurance by contract through TSG. TSG, Technology Solutions Group, is our IT provider. We have a backup system, which is totally separate yet redundant. So totally separate, so we would go to that backup system. And then we would also then go back to our contractual entity, and they would be responsible then for the cost because they insure us for that ransomware attack.
How much does that cost for that kind of protection?
So our base contract, I want to say is around $1.4 million. I don't know what part of that is actually for ransomware, but it is included in there. But I don't know what part of it is for that. Good question though. It just happened in New Orleans. Yes, sir.
The waste energy process that is occurring south of 44, and you, I think, indicated it's going to be across the entire villages in the near future. I just want to raise some very serious concerns about that. All the recyclable plastic, think of what you buy at the grocery store, the drugstore, Sam's, whatever, all the recyclable plastic gets burned. And I read the report from the company that does it. Once a year, they get tested by some government entity. And in 2018, the most recent test, 12% of the waste that they burned generated toxic levels of in the atmosphere, and that burning is going on in our backyard.
So I'm not really sure where you got your information from, so I can't respond to that. But what I can say, having built and also run waste energy plans previously, what I can say is that number one, I think you're talking about Covanta, although you didn't name the company.
I think that's it, yes.
So that's the company that operates in Oklahoma in Lake County. So Covanta actually is and all waste energy is more heavily regulated than landfills, which you could also make an argument contaminate our water, but not playing tit for tat here with you, because I don't want to win. But what I did want to do is just say that waste energy is more heavily regulated than any other producer of emissions, both from any sort of NOx, SOx, mercury, lead, all of that. And there isn't just once a month. If you go on to DEP or any state's waste energy regulation, there's minute, hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly limits. So you can't just pollute a lot and then not pollute a lot. You have limits based on the gradation of all of those managed toxins that go out. And they're the same things that are actually being burned in tires and everything else, but they're regulated. So the advanced scrubbers and all of those units that clean that out, all that exhaust is actually less than you have with the trucks trucking all of that stuff up to Georgia.
Well, we're going to disagree about that.
Yeah,
It requires exhaustive research, and I respect that you have experience in the industry, but from what I've looked at, and it's very cursory, I'm very disturbed that plastic is getting burned indiscriminately, recklessly, polluting our environment. Plastic waste.
Yeah,
Plastic waste.
I'll be-
100% of the plastic.
I'll be
is burned.
very glad to share with you both sides, what the environmentalists say and what the government say about waste energy. And then once you do a little bit more reading, I'll send it to you. I mean, I'll be glad to have a long discussion with you. That's an area of interest of mine, so we could talk on it for hours.
And I'll show you where their marketing on the internet is BS. I've proven it, and I can show you the proof. One more question. Why are the bonds so high? 31, 32,000 for the average 3-bedroom new home. Where does all that money being spent?
So do you know what the bond covers?
Yes.
What does it cover?
Well, it covers a lot of infrastructure, local quote-unquote infrastructure, not interconnecting roads and other things.
So the bonds cover, the bonds which the district doesn't set, so the developer sets that,
Right.
covers the unit cost development. So if there's, let's say, the infrastructure in a unit costs $100 and there's 10 homes, then the bond actually is 10 into 100, so each one is $10. So that is what, all that infrastructure is what the bonds cover.
Right.
If for any district you have a question, you can go back into the engineering report that both is either the districts or the developers, and when that district infrastructure is purchased, you can look at the cost of all of those curb and gutter, roadways, sidewalks, retention ponds, signage, all of the public infrastructure. So
I'm
that's
not
what that
concerned
is.
about what was spent in the last 30, 40 years. I'm concerned about going forward. They're raising close to $100 million a year in new bond revenue. And it's going to go up every year.
Chuck, we got one question. We got to have other people have a chance to answer questions.
My question is real easy and just a point of interest, really.
Yes, sir.
The units being built outside of Brownwood, can you give me a number on how many units are? Are they condos, rentals, or what, please?
So are the Bromwood Lofts?
I guess.
So the Bromwood Lofts are apartments. I know that they have a range of bedrooms. It's not something that we have the oversight amenity of fees. They, what was your question? How many? I think there's just under
They're
400.
rentals is what you're saying.
They're rentals, and they're just under 400. I think there was just an article in maybe the news, Village's News, something, yeah. So, how many units are there? 279, just under 300.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Have a good holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.